Primer, Igniting a Fire Within by Father Thomas Dubay. Chapter 12, Family Prayer. Now we share a secret. There are two audiences for this prayer primer. One is obviously not hidden at all. These are adults and teenagers who have come to the conclusion that this world is simply not enough. It just cannot satisfy their deepest longings. They therefore want a vibrant relationship with God, the number one priority in any sensible person's life. They seek help in this pursuit, and they want to know how to begin it. The second audience is totally unaware of this radical need, even though they also share it. Small children, so small they cannot read these pages. How can they receive the message? Either through their parents who are reading these lines, or perhaps through their teachers at school, or through people who run daycare centres. The ideal and divinely planned setting for introducing young children to a loving relationship with God is a happily married mother and father who themselves have a growing prayer life. Catechism of the Catholic Church 2226. When they take suitable steps to share it with their offspring, great things can happen. Hence, we entitle this chapter Family Prayer. But we urge anyone who is privileged to work with children to adapt what we say here to other circumstances. These include single parents, kindergartens, ordinary schools, catechism classes, daycare centres. All that is needed is goodwill, some knowledge of prayer, and a living imagination. Yes, of course, we assume that we relate to the youngsters with thought patterns and language suitable to their ages. The domestic church. A happy home has been called the domestic sanctuary of the church. See our preceding chapter. A normal family, which is of course a family in a serious pursuit of God, provides the first setting and atmosphere for children to meet their Lord. A refreshing openness to the divine is one of the core traits of youngsters, so praised by Jesus himself. Traits that we adults must also have as a condition for entering the kingdom. If, from their earliest days, infants see mum and dad praying, they rightly assume that prayer is as normal as having dinner together. If parents hold them on their laps or at their sides as they commune with the Lord before bedtime, the youngsters learn, even without explicit words, to that effect that prayer is pleasant, perhaps even a fun thing to do. We are thinking here not only of vocal prayer, which the children may simply listen to at first, but also of meditative prayer, which on occasion the parents may verbalise in simple terms. More of this shortly. The atmosphere. Just as in a convent or monastery, a prayerful atmosphere is one that is penetrated with love for God and for others, so also in the marriage community. A milieu conducive to prayer happens when mother and father are convinced that the two greatest commandments are top priority in their home. All through the nitty-gritty of each day, and week after week, they are at pains to be gentle toward each other and toward the children. Firmness with the children on occasion, yes, but a loving and patient firmness. No harsh words, no nagging, no raising of voices, no quarrelling, and generous forgiveness when there is a slip. Why is this gentle tone so important for anyone's prayer life? The reason is basic and simple. Prayer itself is obviously a love matter. This primer is full of the idea. If there is conflict or harshness in the routine of daily life, all of us, children included, find incongruity, if not pain, in trying to shift gears into something as sublime as conversing with the Lord. If, on the other hand, genuine harmony and esteem for one another penetrate our habitual interpersonal relationships on the human level, Turning to commune with God on the divine level is smooth and normal. Pre-formation of children for prayer. The healthy, unspoiled child is typically full of life, which is why 2 or 3-year-olds are more inclined to run than to walk, why some are almost constantly in motion. Closely allied with this trait is their readiness to question and wonder, especially if parents and teachers take the trouble to point out the numberless marvels in all creation. For example, it takes almost no time to explain and discuss the vein system of a single leaf and what is happening in it, and in every other leaf on this tree, right now. Or for a little older child, how long do you think it would take a jet plane travelling 500 miles per hour to reach the sun? Do your homework before you try that question. You may be amazed yourself. Why does the moon seem to accompany us as we drive in the country at night? Why can you wiggle your toes just by wanting to wiggle them? There is no end to examples that can excite wonder in normal children, or in any adult who is still intellectually alive. As a preparation for meditative prayer, parents and teachers should also introduce children to the appreciation of beauty. How? Just invite them to gaze quietly at a sunset for a minute or two in silence, and then talk with them about it. How big is the sun? How far away is it? How long does it take the sunlight to get to Earth? Do we see the sun where exactly it is right now? Or ponder together a tree or flower or carrot or radish. Or study together in a science book or encyclopedia the wonder of a bird's wing. Later on, marvel with your offspring about atoms, molecules, living cells, the solar system, our galaxy, the entire universe. You and they come alive. Take the time. This enrichment of your children is more important than eating lunch. If you wish a readily available source for material on wonders like these, see the EPB reference above. EPB chapters 7 to 10. Now, what does this all have to do with prayer? A great deal. It is a short step from experiencing wonder, amazement, and beauty to praising, thanking, and loving the supreme artist of it all, who is endless beauty. See our chapter 5 to be reminded again of how expressive the Psalter is in making this very point, and how abundantly it illustrates what we are saying here. Beginning with vocal prayer. We get to know people personally by communicating with them. A greeting, a smile, a nod, but mostly by speaking and listening and responding. Babies learn words and phrases from parents and siblings, but as they develop, they begin to conceive their own ideas and ways to express them. Prayer is communicating with God, and little tots begin by using the vocal prayers they hear and are taught. But as they develop, they can learn to express their own thoughts in their own words, even though they continue to use formulas such as the Our Father, the Hail Mary, and the Glory Be. In teaching vocal prayers, we should accustom children to pray at a reasonable pace, not rattling as the pagans do, Matthew 6:7. This lets them know that we take seriously these conversations with God, His Mother, and the saints. This deliberateness likewise promotes attending with our minds to what we are saying with our lips. Once in a while, especially at the beginning of learning vocal prayers, it is good to explain to the youngsters one word or phrase of the prayer before reciting it. For example, Father or Kingdom. These explanations should not be offered too often, so as not to interrupt prayer time unduly or to create a burden for young minds and hearts. As time goes on, parents and teachers introduce their charges to formulating their own vocal prayers, while they continue with the memorized ones. This prepares them for more personal intimacy with the Lord and his saints, and of course for meditative prayer as well. Teaching meditation to children. Because of the very nature of the family, parents are the first educators of their children. At the top of the list of their formational duties are those that deal with the supernatural welfare of their offspring. Much of what this primer contains can be successfully taught to young children and teenagers. As any skilled teacher knows, instruction must be couched in vocabulary and imaginative thought patterns suited to the age and development of the pupils. Perhaps someday a mother or father or teacher may, alone or together, write a prayer primer for tots and those who teach them. How precisely might we teach small children to meditate? Abstract explanations will not get us very far. The concrete verbalizing of a short meditation would seem the way to go. For example, we might say something like the following: "Now close your eyes, because we are going to think about God living inside us, and then talk quietly to him. He is everywhere, and he is in your heart, right now. And he loves you much, much more than you love yourself. Lord, I love you too. You are really something. You made me, you love me so much. How can I thank you enough? Help me to think of you more often. I adore and praise you. You made the whole earth and every big and little flower. I love you. Goodbye for now." For little tots, these initial sessions of learning by doing should be short and simple. Their attention spans are brief. It goes without saying that source materials for reflections abound in the Scripture, The Imitation of Christ, and in other classics. But they must be put into simple terms. A family project. Meditative prayer can become a family enterprise, though most people would hardly imagine the idea, let alone the reality. We are all familiar with communal prayer before and after meals, in reciting the rosary and other prayers morning and evening. But it is good to know that there are married couples who silently commune with God in contemplative prayer, either alone or together. In an ideal home, it can happen as easily as turning on the television set. Meditation can occur with children participating as well. With permission, I will share the experience of a friend who is also a spiritual director. I was deeply touched recently by a young mother who had great difficulty in finding a time she could spend in prayer. No wonder, she has 4 children in grade school. She decided to incorporate her whole family. They use handout number 1, given to the mother by this spiritual director, as their meditation guide for a particular scripture. The entire family participates in the reading, discussion, and prayer after their evening meal. She said it works beautifully. The participation and insight the children share is profound. The Lord helps her to carry this over into her own time for quiet because she goes to bed. I was also blessed by this, to see a family learning and growing together in Jesus. Where there is a will and imagination, there is a way. The same is true, as we have already indicated in chapter 11 of the Liturgy of the Hours. The official church, as the bride of Christ, herself warmly recommends that lay people participate in this worldwide worship. There is no reason why children on occasion and for short periods of time cannot be slowly introduced to this practice. At first they may just listen while mum and dad pray part of the office. Later they may be invited to say the Our Father and the Glory Be with their parents. A few words, very few, of explanation at the beginning of an hour can introduce the youngsters to what is about to happen. Family quiet times and places. Healthy silence is not a mere negation. Rather, it is a favoured opportunity for conversation. It just depends on with whom one wants to speak. People who care much about each other desire occasional times and places to be alone for their conversations. Dating is an obvious example. Phone booths are another. Husbands and wives in a happy marriage seek these times together when they are feasible. This natural human need for communing silences was raised to the supernatural level by Jesus himself in his habitual and long periods of solitude, prayerfully immersed in the Father. He likewise taught that in ordinary homes the faithful are to go to their private rooms, close the door, and pray to the Father in secret. Matthew 6:6. The most privileged place for prayer is, of course, in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament, even though this blessing is not always possible. In fostering prayer and quiet, parents should not, of course, be overbearing or nagging toward one another or the children. Yet at the same time, the gospel is written for everyone, as we have just noted in Matthew 6:6. Just as mum and dad expect quiet when a family member is ill or is catching up on missed sleep, so they can also teach by example and word that there are quiet times for prayer. Children then understand better how and why we consider a happy home to be the domestic sanctuary of the Church.